Welcome. This community meeting is recorded. Couple little notes. Please introduce yourself before speaking, mute unless you're actively speaking, and questions anytime in the chat. We are going to move pretty quick this morning, just out of respect for some people's schedules. And if you're disruptive, you will be moved. 210 was released. Make sure to go check out the release notes because it was a phenomenal release. And additionally, we are going to be looking to do a New York City user group on the 11th of this month. It's coming very soon. Look out for more details. We should have a meetup page here shortly for that. And with that, speaking of the 210 release, I'm going to introduce Mehul and Ben, who are from Aryn, and they're going to be talking to us about the conversational search feature that was added in the 210 release. Really excited about that. It's currently an experimental, and we need as much feedback as we can. So with that, I'm going to hand it over. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, David. I'm going to go and see if I can share my screen here. All right. So good morning, folks. Thanks for joining, and thanks for all of your interest in what we're embarking on here at Aryn. I want to start with the kind of problem that we saw our customers coming to us with. Actually, let me go back one slide here. The challenge that so we're working with customers that sort of span industry verticals. I'm going to talk a little bit about the problems that we saw, our approach to solving these problems, to solving the use cases for these customers, what we've contributed to OpenSearch 2.10, and kind of dig into the actual features and how to use them. And then, of course, this is going to be, I'm trying to make this much more of a conversational, forgive the pun, interaction than a talk. I mean, I'm sure that David and folks have a version of my talk from OpenSearch Con that they're going to put online. You can certainly go see that. So this is an opportunity to actually interact with us. So briefly, my background: I used to be the general manager of the Amazon OpenSearch service. Helped create the Amazon OpenSearch project, the OpenSearch project, and then the Amazon OpenSearch service, which is based on that. And then my co-founder at Aryn is Ben Sowell. He and I have been working together for over a decade. He's the CTO of Aryn. Just for expediency, I'll give you his history. He's worked on a bunch of services at AWS, including AWS Glue and Lake Formation, and now he's working on Aryn with us. So we started Aryn because what we saw in the industry was just a lack of tools around managing and processing unstructured data. When we went around and talked to a bunch of customers, they were really interested in tapping the value of that unstructured data. So if you're looking at financial services, for example, one of our customers is an investment firm, and their analysts need to sift through thousands of analyst reports, internal research that they have, call logs, and so on, to be able to put together an investment thesis. Or another one of our customers is a manufacturing company. They have thousands and thousands of parts that they built over the lifetime of the company, and manuals for each of those parts. And they want to make it easy for their users, their customers, to be able to quickly find the right parts and how those parts interoperate. So to kind of motivate the problem here, there's a bunch of stuff out there where people want to very quickly peruse through unstructured data and find the answers that they're looking for in that data. And so a new paradigm seems to be emerging. You might have tried this yourself, for example, with Bing Chat or Bard at Google, or even ChatGPT, where you get to ask questions over the web. Now, unfortunately, asking those kinds of questions over the web doesn't do much for your particular data set if you're in an enterprise, especially if it's private internal information. And so there's this new emerging paradigm for working with your data that I like to call conversational search, or chatting with your enterprise data. And the idea is, you use you use a search engine or some kind of search infrastructure to retrieve, and then relevant information. You then use various types of AI models, large language models, which are super exciting these days, to summarize and synthesize answers from the data that you've retrieved. And the data that people are looking at and covering are things like PDF documents, web pages, presentations, spreadsheets, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to skip the demo. It's going to take too long. There's sort of a traditional approach to doing this, which is to think of the generative AI system at the core. Think of the generative AI system as the way to kind of answer all your questions. And many people are using off-the-shelf AI systems like OpenAI or Cohere or Claude or Anthropic. And the problem is that these things actually don't know a lot about your data. In fact, they know nothing of your data. And so they'll hallucinate answers. And training them on your data is basically prohibitive. So the other approach that people are trying to take is retrieval augmented generation. Okay. And here they're putting together their own sort of complex search stacks using Gen AI toolkits and vector databases. Unfortunately, though these things are in infancy, but the idea here is to retrieve the appropriate chunks of your documents, present it to the AI model, okay, and then have the AI model answer the questions that you're looking for. Now, they're in their infancy, they're hard to scale to production. And the other problem is that figuring out what to put into these search stacks, actually cleaning the data, chunking it well, so that you can present the right data to the generative AI system. That in itself is a hard problem. And and today, basically you're left on your own to go solve this problem by yourself. And so this is where we come in. The way we think about solving these problems is, we see search stacks. We think of those things as data pipelines. We're data people, we're database people. And what's missing is a data preparation step. We've added that. I'll tell you about that in a second. And the way we think about solving this problem is using AI as an assistant. You bring the AI of your choice for the purpose, for this task at hand, for the various stages in the pipeline, to simplify the processing that you have and to enrich the processing that you have. So the AI isn't at the center of the world. It's an assistant to be able to go and actually answer your questions. And depending on where, what you're trying to do, you're going to embed this information. You're going to use the right AI for the right task. And these days, you don't have to be a machine learning engineer or an AI specialist to be able to use the AI. You can just prompt it with the right information. And a lot of these things kind of just do these things, do the task on their own. So what we've done in Aryn is we've done two things. One, David talked about, 2.10. We've released conversational capabilities in OpenSearch. Why OpenSearch? It's a tried and true, search engine, open source. People use it in production. Thousands of customers are using it in production every day. Thousands of developers use it for their projects every day. And so why start from scratch? That's the way we thought about it. Why not add the conversational capabilities into OpenSearch? And that way you can get to production faster. So we've added conversation memory into OpenSearch and a search processor, effectively a processor that will coordinate the interactions with LLMs to synthesize answers from your questions. And then the second thing that we've added is a brand new data preparation system, semantic data preparation system, purpose-built for search. We call it Sycamore. It's also Apache licensed V2. And what it is a Python native data flow system for processing unstructured data using LLMs so that you can do things like chunking, enrichment, information extraction, creating embeddings for semantic search, and so on. All right, I'm going to skip that. Let me tell you how all this stuff kind of fits into the architecture with OpenSearch. And then what I'll do is I'll kind of dig into the individual features that we've added into OpenSearch. I'm going to skip talking about Sycamore so much because we really want to focus on OpenSearch itself. So just briefly, let me just tell you that Sycamore runs on Ray. It's a distributed system for kind of taking all the data that you have in your cloud stores, and we want to add more sources, things like databases and SaaS apps, as well as generative AI model. And what it does is it actually, coordinates the interaction with generative AI models. The second thing here is that we have a RAG search processor that works with a variety of pipelines that you can have within OpenSearch. So it just basically, I'll get into the details of this, but this basically, the RAG search processor interacts with your application and the generative AI models, and the conversational memory keeps track of the history of the conversations that you're having. Okay, so let me quickly go into the features here. Like imagine, what you're trying to do here is interact with, imagine what you're trying to do here is, set up an interaction with the data that you have in OpenSearch. Sycamore is basically going to bring all that data in and put it into, your vector index. You put it into the sort of normal term-based index that you have, as well as the vector database that OpenSearch has inside of it. Then you can set up various search pipelines. You might have just a traditional search pipeline that's just doing VM25 retrieval, keyword-based retrieval. Or you might have a neural search pipeline that's doing semantic search. Or you might have a combination of these things that are actually doing a combination of neural search and VM25, which is known as hybrid search. Right now, the recommendation is if you're trying to, bring, relevant documents back based on a question, you want to use actually a combination of these things and weight them appropriately. The RAG search processor actually just sits inside of your search pipeline, takes the results of what's coming in from your hybrid search algorithm, and then gets the context of the interaction through conversational memory, sends that to the generative AI model that you're, of your choice. You can pick whatever model you want. OpenAI is sort of the one that a lot of us are using. The response comes back from there. The RAG search processor also installs the interaction, like the input, the output response, and all of the stuff that's come back, installs it as another interaction inside of the conversational memory, and then sends the results back to the application. So fairly straightforward, but the nice thing is this is integrated with the rest of OpenSearch. So it's integrated with all the security mechanisms and the scaling mechanisms that we have. So you don't have to go build that separately on your own. Okay. Conversation memory, it's exactly what the term means. Implies, is that we give you a list of conversations that you can keep track of. Conversations are accessible by the users that create them. And conversations are a collection of interactions. Each interaction has an input, a response. So the input is, the query that the user might have asked. The response is the response that came back from the LLM. The prompt template, which is, what is the context that you used to go and send to the LLM, and any additional information that you as an application developer wants to record in the conversation memory. Now, the RAG search processor can be configured to use a certain amount of memory and a certain amount of search results that go into the context. You can configure that yourself, or you can use the defaults. They work pretty well. And then, of course, the conversation memory here has your traditional CRUD APIs, creating a conversation, getting responses, getting the last K conversations, getting the last K interactions. And this way, and by the way, all this stuff is built on top of indexes in OpenSearch, so it scales. Like you don't have to have your own sort of separate implementation of this. Okay. And that's it. That's what's available in OpenSearch 2.10. I can quickly go over Sycamore, what it does, and then just open up the floor for questions. Okay. Sycamore is a semantic data preparation system. And so what it allows you to do is prepare unstructured data to get high quality answers from your LLMs. Its programming model is very similar to Apache Spark. The idea is you use this sort of central data structure that we call a document set. I'll talk about that in a second. and then you run transforms over the document set so that these transforms run in parallel, and so it can be done in aggregate. So you can run it on a single laptop, or you can run it on a cluster of machines. And you use these LLMs to segment, do information documents, to do extract information from those documents, things like authors and titles, compute embeddings, so that you can actually put the information into OpenSearch. It's a Python native system, and the reason we chose Python native system is because a lot of the open models that are out there are built to work with Python as the runtime. And right now, Sycamore can read from Amazon S3 and your local file system, and we hope to be able to add more data stores, unstructured data stores that you can read from automatically in here. The document set data structure that you have in Sycamore is a distributed data structure. It's schema free. So document set is basically a collection of documents. Each document is basically a collection of properties, as well as a collection of elements. Elements are basically chunks within your document. Okay, I'll show you an example in a second. And each element has also a set of properties associated with it. You can define transformations in Sycamore that take you from a doc set to another doc set. So transformations, for example, may merge elements, may split elements, or may explode documents so that each element becomes a top-level document. And these kinds of things are the kinds of operations you want to do before you actually get the data into OpenSearch. And again, it automatically parallelizes. So here's an example of what Sycamore can do. On the left-hand side is a research paper, and we've run a bunch of different AI models over it. The first one is a segmentation model that keeps these coherent chunks together. So you can see that you got the title there, you've got individual authors there, you've got the abstract together, you've got paragraphs in the introduction kind of together. And these are the kinds of chunks that you would want to put into OpenSearch. So when you ask a question, the appropriate chunk comes back. That becomes your result set. And then that result set you can either present to the user or send to the LLM, or a combination of these things. The next set of things that we did is what's in the highlights are things that will identify certain entities in your document. So in this case, people often search over title, they often search over authors, and those are the things that we pulled out here. And all of these things basically turn into properties that go inside of your document for your document set. And then those properties then end up becoming things like attributes that you would add into your document model, or into your JSON documents that would go into OpenSearch. Sycamore scales. I think this is the point of this slide. We've run this over thousands and thousands of documents. This is an example where we ran it over 1,000 PDFs. It actually turns into from half a gigabyte of data after you've kind of done the processing, turns into about 7 gigabytes of data that gets indexed inside of OpenSearch. And whether you're running it on a single machine or a cluster of 4 machines, it scales pretty linearly. And the nice thing about Sycamore is it automatically figures out how to schedule all your operations and where to schedule them. So it'll run it on a CPU or a GPU, depending on what's the right operation or transformation you're running and what it needs. So that roughly is what we've built. 2.10 has all the conversational features into it. And with 2.10 plus Sycamore, you can build a conversational application. So with that, let me take some questions.
I have a question. So the RAG processing, do you have just a set of templates that go into that search processor, and are they kind of like stored as static RAG templates, or how does that part work from the OpenSearch side?
That's a great question. So right now, we have in 2.10 some basically hard-coded templates in there. Soon enough in 2.11, that's going to be something that you can modify. Ben, you want to fill
here,
in on
I'm here as well. Yeah, this is Austin.
Hey, Austin.
It's pretty static. I mean, we are adding some parameters to 2.11 release, so you can you can change system prompts, you can change various things, like context size, the chat history window. So there are things you can customize, and that's coming. We're trying to get it into trying to make the code freeze for 2.11. So these things are coming, but if you're just trying it out of 2.10, it's pretty static. It's just the search response processor that you have to attach to a search pipeline, and that essentially does RAG.
Okay, very cool. You just mentioned as well the search or the conversation history. Are you guys controlling history length by, like index management templates? How does that work?
Right now, search history is currently being stored as a system index. And yeah, it's just, and we have CRUD API, so you can create conversations and retrieve chat history. And there is just basic REST APIs to interact with the conversational memory.
Hmm.
So that's, I mean, yeah, it's just so the RAG pipeline, uses conversational history. Like it will actually retrieve the last n number of interactions, and sends it to LLM. And once your question answering is completed, it will actually store that new interaction, as part of an existing conversation. So that's what's happening in the pipeline.
Sam?
So a quick question is about what we're doing with Sycamore. Like, have you considered using the DJL to integrate with Data Prepper and potentially in the ingest pipelines?
So we did think about it. From our vantage point, it seemed like Data Prepper, a lot of the focus was on sort of log ingestion and doing that really well and doing streaming really well. And it seemed like while DJL does a lot of stuff, having that extra bridge to the JVM to native code was also a bit awkward. So I do think that we all attended DB's talk at OpenSearchCon on building sort of Python extensions and various ways of kind of integrating other languages. So I think there's some exciting possibilities for integrating some of this into OpenSearch going forward. But our take, and there's obviously room for lots of takes, but our take is that it makes sense to build this in Python and to build it in something native, and not try to kind of shovel it into to the existing framework.
Yeah, so the extensions would have been my follow-up questions. Thank you for addressing that.
Yeah, it was super cool. I'm super excited to play around with that myself.
Yeah, it's same here.
Anybody else? Don't be shy. Feel free to ask questions. Like with this, you're going to basically build, for your organization, you can basically build the equivalent of ChatGPT. I mean, in fact, you're using ChatGPT to build it with plugins. So I'm sure people have asked for this. If they haven't, I'd like to understand why not. But yeah, go ahead, Brian.
Hey guys, have you guys done any benchmarking on this? I know you guys are using the Ray Apache Ray underneath, but at scales, what does this look like? Have you run it against what type of GPU guys you got to run it? Is there any micro benchmark or any benchmark at all, or has this been mainly run from a smaller rollout so far?
Yeah, so we're still early. We've done some initial benchmarking up to say 4 to 8 nodes with GPUs. So it's able to take advantage of that. It's able to process thousands of documents. We see the linear scaling that we would expect for things like embeddings. We still have work to do to push the needle, to get the really big GPUs to really drive it on hundreds of thousands, millions of documents. But that's where we want to go, right? We know that people are running 100 node Ray clusters out there, and we're designing it in such a way that we can leverage that. So I don't have numbers for you yet. We're not there yet, but scalability is one of the kind of core tenets that we have in designing this, and that's definitely on our list.
So just to clarify, this is like ready to be played with, and you're just dying for people to go over there and provide feedback, and it's ready to go and poke and prod and have fun with.
Absolutely. I mean, it's a 0.1 release on GitHub, so I'm sure you can break it if you try. But we're super excited to see how people break it and to take all your feature requests, and it's out there for you to play with.
That's half the fun. Challenge accepted.
You can just go to docs.aryn.ai to get started with 2.10 and OpenSearch, and also go to the Aryn.ai/Sycamore repo in GitHub to go take a look at how to do that. So both those things are available, and
awesome.
Stack them together, tell us what doesn't work, ask for features, like whatever you think is best. Go ahead, Sam.
Hey, so I actually did want to start playing with Sycamore, but I did watch the video for now. And one question I had was, I noticed in the like at some point after segmentation, there is a call to OpenAI to extract like authors and titles. So I guess my question is, do you think it's possible to do like with a smaller model during this phase of pre-processing with Sycamore that don't require like calls to like OpenAI, and we can get some extraction model, like small extraction model? Yeah.
Absolutely. It's kind of crazy to use OpenAI to pull out titles from a document. That's true. Our kind of philosophy here is that the big models are convenient tools for development, right? You don't really know what you want. You maybe don't have the model ready, so you just use something like OpenAI that can take sort of general instructions, and then replace that with a more detailed model. We have lots of ambitious ideas, things like generating training data from OpenAI to be able to automatically fine-tune a smaller model that you can run for these specific tasks. A lot of that's still in the design phase. We're not there yet, but 100% the intention over time is exactly what you said, to be able to use smaller models where appropriate, and the bigger models where you don't know what to do, where you're just exploring.
Perfect. That makes a ton of sense. Thank you.
Brian, you want to go ahead?
Yeah, just follow up to Sam questions, right? There's Falcon models. Have you guys for extraction, right? Is Falcon model what you guys thinking for the smaller models, or or it has to be like something $30 billion, 30 billion plus parameters, on that side? Is like a 7 billion model is sufficient, because you could fit that into like an A10, right?
Right. Yeah. So we played around a little bit with Falcon. I don't have a kind of great answer on exactly what models to use there. It's really going to depend on the problem, right? Some of these problems that are taking sort of general, if you really want to give it general English instructions, then you do need a more general purpose LLM. But in a lot of cases for these things, you might not even need a fully general, language model. You can use an old school, more traditional model that's significantly smaller, right? That'll run, even on a CPU in some cases. And so there's still work to do to test all the models, to kind of integrate a bunch of different things and try them out. But I think we're trying to think of these things as tools. We're not wedded to, it has to take, general prompts. It has to be a full featured LLM. We just want to use the right tool for the job. And so we're going to experiment with a bunch of stuff. We'd love suggestions if you guys have played around with a lot of models. We have started looking at Falcon. And yeah, we'll go from there.
I do have one question. Oh, sorry.
Oh.
I do have a follow-up question there. It's like there's two type of connectors that Teams has put up, right? One is a HTTP connector, one is a local connector, right? We so far have only implemented HTTP connectors to Cohere, to OpenAI, and to SageMaker. Like, what's your thought process on the local connector? Because I don't see any example yet.
When you say local connector, you mean in the ML Commons, the connector inside of OpenSearch, or you're just talking about Sycamore? Okay.
Yeah.
Austin, do you want to take that? Or you're maybe more familiar with the connector interface?
I'm not sure I understand. I mean, the connector by design is meant for remote inference. So, I mean, the machine learning framework in ML Commons is designed to serve the local models, right? So, and then so the connector was introduced to actually then, preserve the same model interface, but then allow you to actually talk to, remote endpoint. So your calls are actually leaving the cluster and going to a remote endpoint. So I don't see the utility of like a local connector. It's already there, and you're like kind of a native models, right? In ML Commons, they are basically local model connectors.
I think one of the call outs there is just that he didn't see any examples yet using local models. Just wanted, I think, Brian, correct me if I'm wrong, you wanted to make sure that they support the local models inferencing as well as the remote models with ML Commons. Yeah.
Correct. And I just want to understand the thought process because making remote calls, right, it has latency pay, it has latency on your side. Is there a reason, like why even think about local if remote is sufficient? What would be another questions or another questioning on that side, right?
Yeah, the place where we've seen potentially local models to be useful is the text embedding, right? So you actually want to compute embeddings to store in vector search. The actual the sort of final step, the generation part of the RAG, probably doesn't make sense to do locally because those models are big and they're expensive to run, and you don't want to be running multi-giant GPUs in your OpenSearch cluster just to do these sorts of things. And so we support kind of both on the text inference side, but I guess I haven't seen a case where it would make sense to do a local generation model.
Okay. Thank you for the clarity here.
Hey, I had a question. So for the conversations, right? You have these APIs to create, and delete conversations. Do conversations live on like a single index they're like co-located? Basically, they're like tracked by a conversation ID, or how does the conversation API handle that currently?
Underneath the cover is just a system index, so it behaves just like any other index. So you can configure it, like number of shards and replicas. So it's managed just like any other index. I just that it being a system index with the security turned on, it behaves in a certain way. But we didn't introduce. On the storage side, we didn't introduce anything new. It's just a CRUD API that we introduced.
Right. But I guess I'm kind of trying to get at, are you spinning up a new system index for every conversation, or is it just it's
No.
one index that
One index.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. Interesting. And then can you create like, say, maybe someone has a finance team, like maybe create a finance conversational index, and then maybe a general index, such that users can be segregated?
Right now, what we're thinking of is it's still one index, and we don't have a role-based access control implemented for memory yet, conversations yet. So basically, whoever created the index gets to see their own conversation. So like it's kind of, it's what they call private mode. And I think the next thing that we will work on the security side is supporting role-based access control. And then, if you want, so that should give you the kind of access control. I think you shouldn't have to create a separate index to accomplish what you are, I think, thinking of. But if there are use cases, like if you really need that physical separation, not logical, then it's certainly we can support that use case. Ben, I cut you off. Were you saying something?
No, I was going to say the same thing. You explained it well.
Awesome, thanks. What other questions do we have?
With that, I want to make a call out here, which is, we took a stab at what we think people are going to need. As you kind of play around with it, we'd love your feedback on whether, whether there's a particular set of features you'd like there. So an example is the role-based access control that Austin just described. But more importantly, like, at what granularity do you want this? Do you want this at the conversation level? Do you want this at the interaction level? There's a bunch of different things that I'm sure, y'all are going to try to create. And, for us, we can only anticipate what we need. So it'd be great for you to give us some feedback on specifically how you'd want to have this stuff integrated and why.
Yeah, no, I feel like that comes kind of down to who adopts it as well. Like, if you start seeing a lot of people in the HIPAA space adopt it, they're going to have a different access control model than the finance, than, GDPR space. So yeah, it's of course you can't necessarily cover them all out of the box like you mentioned. But yeah, I think it'll be interesting to start seeing who starts adopting that widely.
Yeah, and from an open source perspective, I mean, we're all in the OpenSearch Slack. So if you have ideas, if you have questions that we don't get to today, feel free to hit us up there. Austin's also, I know, pretty active on the in GitHub, so you probably see his PRs floating around. So yeah, feel free to reach out, and we're more than happy to take any feedback, positive or negative.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah. At this point, I'm gonna open it up to general Q&A. If there are any more questions, thank you, by the way, so much for the coming, Aryn team. Also, thank you for contributing the conversational search feature. I know a lot of people are going to be really interested in this, as we can already tell from some of the conversation today.
I can't wait to play with it myself. I'm chomping at the bit over here.
But if there's any general Q&A, feel free to drop it in the chat. Come on, Mike.
So I'm curious about, like, I tend to go after novel things to solve, like my comment about will it DM a D&D campaign for me if I feed it a bunch of D&D content. Like, do you see a lot of people using these things for novel kinds of just generic fun kinds of things? Like, what if I feed it the script from my favorite movies and tell it to act like my favorite character? Are these, like, is this purely data retrieval conversational, or is this like general purpose, make what you want out of it by feeding it the right data? Or am I just perceiving it entirely incorrectly?
So it's an interesting question. I think we focus mostly on the sort of business use cases, just because that's where we've seen our customers. I think certainly the big LLMs, ChatGPT will do those sorts of things, and if you feed it context, you can get it to sort of behave in certain ways. So it's entirely possible that if you had a good database of D&D lore, for example, that you could feed it in, and then you could tell it, okay, well, these are the stats of a goblin. Now tell me about how these things interact. But I couldn't tell you exactly what it's going to do.
Another challenge accepted. Thank you.
Hey, so just just one last follow-up on the Sycamore integration. So quick question to the Aryn team. Are you guys planning on exploring extension right now for Sycamore, or do you have like a GitHub issue open, or you need some help with that?
So it's something we're going to look into. Honestly, we just sort of learned about the Python extension stuff and the extension stuff in general sort of over the weekend or last week at OpenSearchCon, and we haven't digested everything yet from that trip. So I definitely sort of interested in poking around. If you have ideas or specific things you think we should take into account, I'd love to see them either in a a GitHub issue or just ping us on Slack or something, and I think it would be a cool thing to explore. So definitely have plans to explore. I don't have a sort of concrete like development plan for it yet.
Cool.
And Sam, what why do you want to run Sycamore as an extension? I'm curious as to the thought process around that.
Yeah, I'll explain. That's a good question. So the thought process is that
right now, we're thinking about the user experience, when using our product. And one thing, for example, that we ask customers to do today is either set up ingest pipelines, set up data prepper, and what we really want. So, for example, even some companies, which we're not going to mention by name, have data prepper hosted service. So really the question we're asking ourselves is like, Sycamore looks like a very, very useful thing as a pre-processing tool. And the main question we're asking is really, is it something that we can seamlessly integrate, and how do we do that? So that's like the reason why I'm bringing up all these questions about integration.
Cool. Well, thanks for all the questions. There's definitely a lot of cool stuff to think about. We're excited, and we're looking forward to what's coming next.
Let's at least create an issue so we can at least collect use cases and ideas. I mean, whether it ends up making sense or not, I think it's let's carry this discussion over on GitHub. This is good.
Any other questions before we close it off for the day?
Just for the good of the order, before we move on to anything else, if anyone feels comfortable sharing any feedback about OpenSearchCon, I'd love to hear anything that you think went well, or anything you'd like change. We can take that feedback in person if you're comfortable.
Hey, I thought it went really well. So I've got things that I can say that are great things about OpenSearchCon. I think, one, I think you did a really good job of making sure that everybody was kind of included. In the presentations, people had an opportunity to really voice their opinions, pluses and minuses. Doesn't really matter. I think you did a really good job of trying to get the community together. And we certainly were appreciative of it, but I noticed that there were a lot more than just us, folks that are excited about the conference and future conferences. One thing I would encourage you to do, and I'm sure others are asking the same, is I would encourage you to try to figure out how to get more customers to the conference. At the end of the day, it's a conference where people get an opportunity to understand what's available for them and how they can benefit. And it's really the customers that we're doing all this for. And so I'm just curious as to how we can help with that as well.
Yeah, you're right, and some of that may turn into a bit of a numbers game, just inviting more people and starting early. So we haven't calculated exact attendance rates or anything, but yeah, I think that the ultimate solution will be just advertising early, advertising often.
And if I may add, I think it's a good point, Mehul. Might come down to us reaching out, as Nate said earlier, and letting all the partners know, hey, this is happening. Here's how you can invite your customers or your audience. That might be a beneficial way to really spread the web a bit wider next time.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, I got I cut out a little bit earlier there, but my recommendation was more than just, hey, get more customers. My recommendation was like, one of the biggest providers for OpenSearch as a managed service is AWS.
Sure.
You have plenty of people that are using OpenSearch on a daily basis, and just getting them up on stage, talking about how they're gonna use it for a variety of high scale or interesting new use cases and purposes. Just getting them up on stage, I think, would be useful.
Yeah, and I mean, to keep it even, getting customers of every managed service out there would be beneficial, not only to the individual or the companies running those services, but to the customers of other services. I think that keeps it interesting, really. You know, how are you,
Exactly. So
how are you using it there? What are the unique use cases that this service offers that are beneficial to you as a customer? I think those are good points.
exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So there's, you know, the number of partners in that room, there are plenty of customers of those partners.
Absolutely.
Right. So
So yeah, but Mehul, when you go for customer centrics, right? You know, the impact you're going to see there is you know, a lot of the technical talks becomes less relevant, especially for you know, managed services customer, right? They're used to, hey, just you know, you guys run the hard stuff. We don't care, right? They only do the application level side. So contextually, the talk will drastically change from a developer centric, which is what OpenSearch 23 was like, to a customer centric one is going to be slightly different. So I just want to call out as, you know, the format's going to look very different if you do that.
And there's a way to balance that, really. You know, when we went into getting the speakers and getting the people to give the talks, it was put up in front of a panel, and it's all going to come down to the CFP and who writes the most interesting CFP that's going to kind of hit the widest audience and be the most useful to the widest audience. So maybe that's something we take into the CFP process next year, is how do we balance those different audiences? I'm not going to say they're two audiences, but different audiences and different looks on how you improve OpenSearch Con, or make it a more wide, I'm not using the right words now.
Yeah, maybe pick more conference tracks and kind of highlight where they overlap.
Yeah.
You know, because some of them are like use case conference tracks where some of them are deep down technical details, and the scope for those overlaps for certain customer bases. And so yeah, I think there's a lot of behind the scenes math we can do there to make them the most interesting as possible for everyone.
Right.
Yeah, I was gonna say, because it was funny, we tailored it, or attempted to tailor it more towards the like users of OpenSearch rather than the builders this year. We just received an overwhelming number of submissions in the builders category, which I thought was interesting. And I think it goes back to, you know, that's our core community right now. But we are making conscious decisions to extend that community. Like right now, Slack is built mostly for developers of OpenSearch, or so it feels, because that's who I see interacting a lot. But getting more users engaged on that is just going to take some intentionality over the next several months before OpenSearch Con 24.
Daryl had a good point in the chat. You know, those who are more of a using OpenSearch type stuff, we separated out into a 100-200 track, and you know, we're learning with the community as we go, as we grow this OpenSearch Con. We absolutely want your input on this, so thank you.
Was anyone intending to submit a talk but did not, because either you were uncomfortable getting on stage, or you didn't think that your talk was good enough, or like, was there anyone who was borderline about to submit but lacked confidence or anything like that? Like, was there some kind of interpersonal help we could have offered to anyone to kind of encourage them to submit something where they otherwise would not have? Okay, that's a good answer. I'm glad to hear that nobody responded there. In case that changes, if anyone here ever feels like, well, I really want to contribute, I could use some advice or some help, that's what DevRel is for. Please do reach out to Chris or David or I. We will make sure you get at least some advice and some help.
Absolutely.
So before we close out, I did want to make one call out in particular to Lukasz. I'm going to call on you because I don't know if you got a chance to see the previous session. I know it was after hours for you, but we did get an answer for can you run, what is it? what was it? Tests on the nightly runs on demand. Did you see that yet?
No, I did not. Sorry.
Okay.
So
Okay. No, it's so good. I didn't direct it to you anyways, but I just want to let you know there is a mechanism that we're working on that will allow people to run the overnight benchmarking on demand. It'll probably go into a queue, but we don't have concrete implementation details for when that's going to be out. But I did want to let you know that's on the horizon.
yeah, that's good. I was actually thinking about it, like, hey, maybe it can be based on labels on you know, in the GitHub. If the PR or something get labeled, then maybe it can be included in the. But anyway, it can be implemented in different ways.
That's for sure. But yeah, and if you have a preference there as well, like needs benchmarking, you know, I think that's the other thing is we are going to have to figure out how do we balance like, hey, you know, this person submitted like 30 PRs and they've said it needs to go like with on-demand benchmarks. But yeah, so hopefully we'll have an issue here shortly that you can contribute to. So thank you.
Great, thanks.
Well, thanks everyone.
Mhm.
Always nice to see all these familiar faces. I'm starting to find a lot of solace in these community meetings.
Thanks for inviting us to talk today. And thanks for, the just wonderful feedback and questions that everybody had. Please try the stuff out. Use it in anger and let us know.
Also, just a quick call out. Austin dropped a Sycamore as a Python extension issue in the chat. No details yet, but if you want to track that, thank you for doing that, Austin. Appreciate that. All right. Thanks, everyone. I guess I feel comfortable wrapping up here. We're just about at time. Thank you for all of our new people. Samuel, see you. Not Sam, different Sams. But yeah, Aryn, thank you. Thanks all for coming. So appreciate y'all.